My guest today is David Abraham. He's the co-founder of Outpost and leads the team's co-living and co-working growth strategy. Outpost is occupying an interesting space at the intersection of work and life. Initially focused on digital nomads, the changes that the pandemic has forced on business and work culture around the world has put them in a unique position to foster long-term leisure stays with everything one might need to continue working, to grow their network, or embark on a new venture. This is a space that's certain to see rapid growth, and it was fascinating to hear David talk about where he sees the industry going in the next couple of years. So let's get to it. This is episode 40 of the Proven Principles podcast, David Abraham on getting ahead of evolving travel trends. Enjoy. We are good to go, man. Thanks for being on the show. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah, of course. David, you are the co-founder of a company called Outpost. I'd love for you to just sort of give a little bit about your origin story, how you got to be where you are, and how Outpost, first of all, what it is and how it came to be.
Sure. Well, Outpost is a hospitality brand that's focused on the remote worker. We provide living, working, social spaces, experiences in idyllic destinations. In 2020, we have 4 locations that were operations in Cambodia, in Bali. So the reason for our existence was because of the lifestyle that I had and that I had led. I was back in 2012. Well, actually, for much of my after 2010, I was traveling and working. I worked in Uganda, I worked in Japan, China, and I was actually researching and writing a book in about 2012 on sustainability. And I was in a cafe in Tokyo at about 3:30 or 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, and I was typing away, and I lifted up my head and I looked around, and I saw so many other people in the cafe working, and was wondering, well, what are they doing there? Shouldn't they have an office? Shouldn't they have a place to be? I had nowhere to be. And so then it dawned on me, if they were in a cafe in the middle of the city, why couldn't they be anywhere? Why were they stuck in the city? So we thought, well, why not set up a place for people who didn't have to be in the office and be in an idyllic location like Bali. Bali was always a place that I really enjoyed to go to. So we thought about what are the services a remote worker, or now I use the term anywhere worker, needs. And so we set up a small workspace and a couple villas, and we tried to bring a community out to Bali to work. And at the time, there were lots of people called digital nomads. They were historically folks who were tied to their computer, usually in tech or some in marketing. And what we saw over time was that more people were realizing that they didn't have to be in the office full time. And for days, weeks, or months at a time, and some indefinitely, they were on the road. And they came to Outpost because it was a community of other people who were entrepreneurial and creative global citizens, and they wanted to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. So it was a side project that in 2018, we really spent a little bit more time focusing on. And that's when it led to more of our growth.
If only you could see 2 or 3 years down the road, right? When you launched it, and all of this just completely changed.
The seeds for it, there's seeds for it go back to well before year 2000, when the tools that people needed at their office didn't have to reside at their office. When we got past, when mainframes and large computers, and there were tools that tethered people to the office. And once things got smaller and more portable, and you could have far more technology and power in your hand than you could at the office, there became less reason to be at the office to do work. Now, obviously, there are a lot of social reasons to be in the office, but there became less reasons from a work perspective to be in the office. And so what we saw in 2012 was this niche type of community, this niche type of traveler, and we wanted to serve them. And we thought we would see this lifestyle where people didn't have to be in the office in the 2030s. And when I sat down across from people in 2017, 2018, I had to explain to them what remote work was. And so obviously what the pandemic has done is taken that and flipped it on its head. There's not anyone who doesn't know where remote work is. There's not an HR department in a company not thinking, well, how are we going to incorporate remote work in the future? A recent study came out that said 90% of HR managers expect they're going to have to find ways to make remote work work. Right. 30% of people in the US don't want to go back to the office and would choose to quit. And to me, that's shocking. Wow. Because they're deciding that they would do that in a recession or depression. I'm not too sure where we are.
That's another show.
Yeah. So it's a lifestyle change, and the question is, how do we get ready for it in certain aspects of hospitality?
Yeah, that is a really interesting point. I wonder, as you're talking about how the company came to be and this niche group of people who just started to explore remote working, a pretty small group of people back then. But as we kind of moved through the mid 20 teens and kind of pushing into 18 and 19, what did you find? I'm just curious to know, like, just through your research and talking to people, what did you find was one of the biggest barriers to potentially having this take off? And and I'll maybe preface the question by saying, you talked about technology, and that allowed it to be a lot easier for people to do this. But there was still, at least in North America, this company culture that resisted that remote work, that resisted people not being in the office, and you had to be in your boardrooms. And now, because of the pandemic, that's completely shifted again. And it's just interesting to see the evolution of this and how quickly we've come to remote work being not just something that people want to do. It could end up being a recruiting and retention strategy for organizations.
Correct. It definitely is. I think the initial barrier was, how do you get work done out of the office? How can you do it? You're in Bali, you're in Sri Lanka. What are you going to do? So that mindset is tough to break. And even if you don't have that mindset, when you're in New York or San Francisco or Chicago during the winter, and you're talking to someone in Puerto Vallarta or somewhere else, there feels to be like an imbalance. Like, wait, I'm slugging away here in Chicago, and it's kind of rainy sleet, and you're there. How are you possible getting anything done? So there's kind of this jealousy, not understanding, and it even played out with me. In 2016, I was telling people in New York, yeah, we can chat next week. Any morning will work. And I would tell people that because, well, I was in Bali and I didn't want to stay up till 5 a.m. for the phone call. But no one thought much about it. And it wasn't until 2018 that I started telling people exactly where I was. So there was this momentum towards people understanding where remote work was. And I also think that there's, and this is a side topic, but really focus on office culture, is that as companies go remote, there's different levels of honesty and transparency that you need. And I think a lot of the millennials and Gen Zers understand the transparency that you need to make decisions. And because you're not in a central place, there's always this fear of, wait, what's happening out there in the beyond? And so when decisions are made, you felt, and the company is not necessarily so honest and transparent. I mean, this is down to transparency in salaries, transparency in everything. Then they feel unattached to the company. So it can go completely wrong if people aren't, rigorously transparent. And I think that's where the younger generation, as they become managers, that was the linchpin to us before the pandemic of when remote work would take off. When these 30-somethings became 40-something decision makers, that's when we looked at the change, what was going to happen.
That's really interesting. I personally came up in a time, and I know how that sounds, because when I went to school, we walked uphill both ways. No, but when I was coming up through the ranks, a lot of the time it was about the number of hours that you're in the office equals the amount of productivity that you have. And so there was always this race to be the first one in and the last one out, even though you weren't necessarily, maybe you weren't doing anything. You could have just been, clacking away on Facebook or, having conversations with people around the office and not actually doing any productive work. Whereas, I haven't seen any stats on this, but anecdotally, I can say, since not being in an office, I actually have to manage my time far better now because I get stuck into things so much easier. My productivity is so much higher. And I find that I end up doing a lot more work during downtime when I should probably be, closing the laptop and, going and doing other things. And so I think it's fascinating just to see how this is all going to play out. And you guys are at the forefront.
Well, you do see a lot of challenges with the blending of time. And sure, that's great when I want to do whatever I want to do and I love my work and I want to be involved. But there's that blending of time that happens when you are blending spaces. Mm-hmm. So when you're working from home or it's still very important to keep those same rigorous schedules and find ways to kind of be productive within the time and space that you have really allotted to it.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of locations where you've got Outpost locations. Are you purposefully going after, traditional vacation destinations, places like Bali or, and the like, or do you see growing into more urban locations in the future?
I don't think urban locations are necessarily not idyllic. And what I mean by that is I remember I was in Bangkok in 2017 or early 2018. And I was with my business partner there, and we were on the MRT, the BTS, all the acronyms, the metro service blend together. As I sit here in Singapore, so I was there, and some guy came on and said, "Hey, you're the Outpost guys." And we said, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I'm here for a month, and then I'm going to move on." And so places like Bangkok, Saigon are places that are destinations for certain people. Mm-hmm. It's kind of akin to the hostel market. You think hostel markets are great in vacation areas. It's social. People are relaxing. You see them in Siem Reap everywhere, and people are spending time soaking in the culture and going out for drinks. But they work in cities too. So the concept of where people want to spend time, and that really dictates us. There's certain cities that are probably less appealing, mm-hmm. But we feel that the concept can work if people want to go. It's a medium-term concept that splits in terms of socialness, between the hotel and the hostel. Where the hotel or resort, oftentimes you're going and you have interactions with the space. Mm-hmm. You're not have interactions with others. And then the hostel, and you want to soak up who else is there. But the question is, you get to an age where you don't want to hear Ashley snoring in the background. And you still want to have that privacy, but the socialness. And I don't know where that concept isn't fully developed. And so at the very core of the very core of what we do is that interaction. And now we focus on remote workers, but I think there's a lot of space for that in the years to come.
Yeah. Can you, there's so much that I want to get to in the show here, and I want to be, I know you've got a hard stop too, so I'll try to be pointed with some questions here. When somebody wants to book time or book a stay with you, can you walk me through what the experience is like? So that, I'm assuming they go to the website, they book a room for a certain length of time, as if you would book a traditional hotel room, I'm assuming. But then what does the rest of that look like when they get on property? What are some of the services that are there? What can they take advantage of?
People who are coming out to us, there's this level of trust that they're coming. A lot of them are first timers. They're figuring out, how can I actually do work? And they also want to know who they'll meet. So really, when someone comes to us, it's less about the amenities. And a lot of these hospitality players who are getting into, work from our location are highlighting their desks or highlighting their Wi-Fi. And obviously that's necessary. But I can't remember a time with the exception of someone asking about, do you have standing desks or a yoga ball, that anyone's really asked us about a desk, a chair. Increasingly, they stop asking about Wi-Fi because it's getting to the point where people don't ask us about electricity.
It's a utility.
Yeah.
Right.
It's there. So when they come to us, oftentimes they're curious who else is there, what events are going on. Those are the questions they're asking us. They're not asking us about the size of the room or the thread count of the sheet. So it's the overall experience of who they're going to meet during their time there, how they're going to grow, what job context they may have. So they come and they're interested in having beers with people that they're sitting across from at the workspace. They are interested in learning about new types of skills that they could have. They're interested in coming to Art at Dawn to create something. They're interested in soaking up the culture and meeting people who they would never meet because they're not in Bali. So Balinese artists, they're interested very much in wellness. So there's a type of lifestyle that people have and a vision of what they want to do. And oftentimes it's overwhelming of what they want to do. They want to do this, and they're there for 4 weeks. And I used to say a year ago, people came out and they had this idea and they were on a work sabbatical and they couldn't get everything they wanted done. Their project never worked out, but they went to yoga every day. Even if they went back to the UK after this experience, they had a fond memory of Outpost. So we have this really privileged position where we're kind of a bucket list place where people want to spend time, and they often remember. And because of that, we have this privilege to serve someone a lot of unique experiences, especially shared experiences that they're really seeking to soak in. It's almost distracting.
Taking them away from the work because there's so many other things to do.
Right.
That's I think coming at it from that holistic perspective, and not just because there's plenty of hotel rooms in Bali that somebody could go stay at, and there's plenty of places that people could go stay at a hotel and work at that hotel at a desk or in a lobby. But there's something so much more fulfilling on a different level, I would imagine, where people can maybe have the space to explore things that they're interested in doing and have the people around them to bounce ideas off of, maybe in completely different industries. That networking effect has got to be pretty powerful.
It is the part of the Outpost society. They're coming out, they're coming to this alchemy of ideas. And we've always believed that some of the greatest inventions and thoughts come from on the borders of society. Yeah. And people come out and spend time in the beyond and mix with people, and then they carry those relationships with them. I'm excited when I hear we've had groups go out to Burning Man together. We've have a company that was started that's now based in Pakistan, that a payment provider. The people met at Outpost, not Pakistani, and then went out to Pakistan and started a payment provider. So there's kind of this entrepreneurial and creative vibe that we seek to foster.
Like an incubator, a non-official incubator.
Right.
That's amazing. Right. You alluded to it a little bit, but maybe if we could dive in a bit deeper into some of the changes that you're starting to see in the industry, with where things were as you were really getting into the launch of Outpost, and then what some of the changing needs are of travelers and what you're hearing out there as a result of COVID, and how some of this company culture and remote working is changing into the future. Are you seeing anything that you could maybe provide some insight to listeners on about what some of the changing needs are of travelers, business travelers, leisure travelers? I think you used a term that I liked in our initial conversation. I think you called it bleisure.
Yes.
Right.
So I'm fascinated. Well, the bleisure travel, the combining of business and leisure, I did that when I was traveling abroad. I was in Peru I had a business trip there, and I stayed on for a few days and saw Machu Picchu. That's where business leads leisure travel. Have a meeting in Hong Kong, spend 3 days in Hong Kong, and it's a great experience. So what we're seeing with Anywhere Work is the opposite is happening, that people are deciding where they want to go and bringing business with them. So the locations have changed and the dynamics of what people need have changed, because when it's a leisure opportunity, all right, you're spending 4 days and you're going to a conference and then you hang on. And at the same property. Maybe if you're more ambitious, you're gonna go somewhere else. But then you're a typical, you have a tourist profile. But the Anywhere Worker has a different mindset, and it's more of one of, all right, I want to get in, I want to get settled, I want to get grounded, and I want to make sure I can get stuff done. And a lot of people going away for the first time will be a little bit nervous or concerned. How do they get grounded? Because it's going to be exciting going to a new place. In fact, I encourage companies that are setting up a policy of when people are traveling, their first few days they should take as vacation rather than working, because you just get too distracted. So what we're seeing, in terms of the leisure, that's a big shift. So people are going to be directed to where they're going to want to go. And we see a lot of the similar trends that other people are seeing, longer term stays. We had a sales campaign for people coming out to our locations, although they don't know exactly when they're going to come, but they're booking longer stays. So typically we'd see 2 weeks to a month. The pre-bookings we're seeing 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, much longer stays.
Does that change how you market the properties, especially with people that are maybe thinking leisure first in their destination? Does it change how you would typically go after trying to acquire those customers?
As someone newer to the industry, and my staff is more well versed, I've never marketed just a leisure product.
Yeah.
So I can't really say. For us, we've been trying to focus on longer term stays, and we have people who are coming in, and we don't rely on OTAs to the extent that other folks do, because our product doesn't sell well on an OTA. You go to our booking.com, you see the hotel property, you see the rooms. That's not what we don't compete on amenities, and we compete on shared experiences.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't list well. There are other types of services that are sprouting up that are focusing on medium-term stays, coliving.com, any place. These they do. So that's more of a match for us. We have a lot of more direct bookings because people are making a clear decision. They're researching more as to where they want to be and what community they want to join.
Yeah.
So sometimes that requires a little more handholding because they want to speak to someone. So that's we have more direct communication with people before they come over.
Yeah. I mean, and you actually, what you just said there, even though it may not be that obvious, that you're selling the experience of being there. You're providing people with maybe some more information about the destination, on where they're going. And that's a pretty big shift from how hotels have typically marketed. Usually it's come stay in our beige room in whatever city you're going to. And, maybe there'll be a handful of restaurants nearby that you can go eat at. And that's the extent of the experience you're going to have, especially on your business trip. Leisure is a little bit different, but it's been such an interesting shift to start to see since, the pandemic has taken hold, and this is our new life now, is that, there's only so many travelers coming into a city, and hotels have to start kind of banding together and selling the benefits of the destination. And you see this especially in some of the smaller areas where people that live in big urban centers go to vacation, the drive destinations, where it's not just come and stay at this hotel in the mountains. It's like, hey, when you come to the mountains, you've got X, Y, and Z that you can do. Oh, and by the way, we've got a great room that you can stay at when you're here. And that's a very different way of looking at it than we have in the past. Even based on what you're talking about, you guys may be leading the way there.
We see people traveling not because, or not solely because what is there, but rather who is there. Mm-hmm. And so that's the market we have. They want to meet the other folks who are there. And so that takes a little bit more learning, because you're trying to read through the material and see who else am I going to meet while I'm there.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the challenges that typical hotel properties that want to attract a large nomad community is how do you get people coming in who may want to work and meet other people, and with your usual leisure travelers, and how do you create that space? It's a little bit awkward. It can be done if it's thought through, but it doesn't always make sense to take a property that had focused on one market and say, all right, we got desks and beds, let's focus on remote workers. You'll get some people, you'll get probably couples, potentially families that don't really want to interact with other folks. But it can be an awkward mix.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like when a hotel is half rented or 3/4 rented by a wedding, and you've got these other people who are coming in and they kind of feel like, oh, I'm coming into someone else's party.
Yeah. I think you're right. God, you just made me have like 10 flashbacks, like instantly about, my days working on property with that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's true. So what's next for Outpost? How's the 2021-22 roadmap shaping up for you? Well,
it's the most exciting time we've faced and the most challenging time. It's hard to be, it's hard not to be excited about the future of anywhere work when we've said, all right, in the 2030s, we're going to expect tens of millions or close to 100 million people who could be traveling and working. And then all of a sudden that happens overnight. Overnight. And even if it's whatever the increase is, it's far more than we thought it would be. At the same point, it's a challenging time when borders aren't open, when the shakeout in hospitality has yet to play, especially in Southeast Asia, where banks have done what they can to keep existing. They've been a little bit more forgiving. But that time is ending, and what's this general shift, and how does Outpost expand within it? We're keen to look forward to expand our ways in an asset-light way, really to help build that community, give our members more places to go to, because they come to Bali and are excited, but where else can they go? We do offer some trips that are outside our destinations, so to get people to other locations. But we're excited to be in more destinations, and looking for partners who want to bring our concept to their shores.
Nice. That's great. Hey, if anybody wants to learn more about Outpost or get in touch with you, David, what's the best place for them to go?
The easiest place is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. Sounds good. I'll link to your profile in the show notes if anybody wants to get a hold of you. Well, David, this was fascinating. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Appreciate you giving some insight. And I think you guys are doing something unique and interesting. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Adam. Great chatting with you.
You too. This was my episode with David Abraham. Be sure to check out Outpost at destinationoutpost.co. You can also find David on LinkedIn. I'll link to both in the show notes. You can see the full interview on YouTube. Just search the Proven Principles Podcast. And if you want to learn more about the show, just head over to our website, theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. Finally, if you need help with a business strategy or just need someone to talk to about a tough problem in your hotel or restaurant, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by going to knowinghospitality.com/contact. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.
For past episodes, show notes, or if you've got a story that might make a great episode, head on over to theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, even on YouTube. And if you haven't already, don't forget to leave us a rating and a review. Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles Podcast.